Welcome, UCL fans, to my second playoff prediction or playoff analysis video, however you want to look at this, for the United Championship League. I'm Nintendo Fanatic 64. I've been watching every match since week 1, and I'm coming up now with who I believe will be making it into the playoffs. So now, before I get into all this, I would like to mention I am in no way affiliated with the UCL or any other coaches involved with this. This is just me taking my time to figure out who's going to make it in, maybe even potential winners. The way I've got this down is I have written out all the remaining, there are 3 weeks left in the UCL. Week 12 just happened this last Saturday. And in my last player predictions video, which apparently my mic was muted on last time, but it isn't this time. I already checked it, so it should be all good. We had, at that point, 5 teams that were biting for playoff positions and 3 teams that were what I was calling a wild card, which basically, if they met certain circumstances, they would have been able to make it into the playoffs. Basically, they had to win all 4 weeks remaining at the time, as well as have 2 out of the 3 lower end teams lose 3 out of the 4 weeks. But unfortunately, after this past week, those teams didn't even make it through. They lost. All 3 of those teams ended up losing this week, so they are now out of playoff contentions. So we're down now to only 5 teams for the playoffs. 2 teams have only need to win 1 or 2 more matches to guarantee themselves into the playoffs. The other 3 teams are all on the same level for things. So we're going to go ahead and start taking a look. We're going to look at the number 1 seeded team that I have right now, which is the St. Louis Rampardos. Are currently 11-1, and they have 3 matches left, which I believe they were going to do very strongly in. This last week, of course, they took on the Tulsa Talonflames, where I originally predicted them to win, which they ended up doing. This weekend, this Saturday, they take on the Grand Canyon Greninjas, whose current record is now 2-9. For this match, I do believe St. Louis will win this. If St. Louis does win, they are basically guaranteed into the playoffs due to the differential scores of how I rank them on things. Even if he gets 6-0 the remaining 2 weeks after that, which I don't foresee happening. Even if he was to lose, it won't be to a 6-0 loss. St. Louis should make it into the playoffs with no problem. All they need to do is win this weekend, and they're in the playoffs. So there's no way around that, I believe. So, 1 more match to win. I believe they will win against Grand Canyon Greninjas this weekend, but again, we'll have to just tune in and find out. If they do fail to beat the Grand Canyon Greninjas, the following week they have the Philadelphia Feraligators. That's another one where, again, I predict St. Louis will be able to get the victory. As good as the Philadelphia Feraligators have been, taking on some of the top-rated teams, which they did this last weekend, was just did not have the battling strategy available to it. The coach of the Philadelphia Feraligators, PK Sparks, has said that he can guarantee himself a win if a drive of the St. Louis Rampardos does not bring his Mega Metagross. As of right now, Mega Metagross has been in every single UCL match that St. Louis has had, and currently leads the league with the most knockouts. I believe it has like 27 knockouts so far this season, with the next closest Mon being Entei from the Carolina Keldios, who has about 20 kills right now for it. So, it'd be foolish for him not to bring it because he's brought it every week, but at the same time, you would think some of these teams will be planning for that because it's just been tearing through everyone's teams, it seems. But, so that's at least the next 2 weeks. I foresee St. Louis getting the win. Final week, week 15, takes on the Tucson Terrakions, coached by the King Nappy. This match is really too close to call. I mean, it could really go either way because the Tucson Terrakians have been doing really well. Even the coach did not expect to have the current win-loss record that they had. Didn't think of making it into the playoffs, but they're actually one of the 5 potential teams to make the playoffs for it. It all will come down to how the UCL decides to do it, if they go by a differential, how I do it. it's going to be too close to call for it. So, I mean, I could see St. Louis winning just because A-Drive has been preparing his teams well. He doesn't get too nervous getting into them, or at least he doesn't appear nervous going into the battles. And then with the Tucson Terrakions, again, coached by the King Nappy, he gets super nervous before every battle, and as well as he should. There are a lot of scary teams out there. He prepares well, and he thinks his moves out properly. So it'll be a great match nonetheless. So that's one of the matches I'm looking forward to the most in the remainder of the season. Will be the St. Louis Rampardos taking on the Tucson Terrakions. So by the end of it, St. Louis will either end the season more than likely at 14-1 or 13-2. That's if, like I said, with the match with him and the Tucson Terrakions, too close to call, so that one could go either way. I do predict wins for the next 2 weeks. If he gets at least one more win, of course, like I said, guaranteed into the playoffs. Moving on, second-ranked team we have right now, the Newcastle Nido Kings. Current record is 10-2. Have been on the biggest winning streak in the UCL. They lost in the first 2 weeks, and then from week 3 and on, have not lost a single match. 10-game winning streak, spreads out the kills amongst his mons, doesn't have one standout one that he brings all the time for it, unlike the St. Louis Rampardos. Like I said, they bring the Mega Metagross, and it's gotten more kills. Newcastle Nido Kings, only mon that really stands out was the Haxorus, who's gotten, I believe, about 15 or 16 kills this season, but doesn't bring it every single week, has only brought it about maybe half the time for it. So, does really well. This last week defeated the Philadelphia for Alligators, knocking them out of playoff contentions. So has 3 more weeks left for it, and depending on how well it goes, it has this weekend Carolina Kelios. Current record, I believe, is 5-7 after the week 12. Excuse me, cat trying to get out. Sorry about that. I predict the win for the Newcastle Nido Kings. In all honesty, with the rest of the remaining matches, I predict Newcastle Nido Kings winning. So this weekend for Week 13 takes on Carolina Kelios. As strong as Carolina has for a team, I think that Newcastle's been doing so well as of late. I don't foresee them losing anytime soon. Pittsburgh Pichus the week after that. That one could be really close. It should be a great match nonetheless. I do believe Newcastle will get the win on it, but it'll definitely be a close match. It'll probably end up being a 1-0 or 2-0 for it. There is the potential that Pittsburgh could win. Coached by Nub Nexus, of course, he has been doing really well with his strategies. It just sometimes maybe gets sometimes risky. The week he went up against the Tucson Terrakions, came down to almost winning if he hadn't missed a Seed Flare on his Shaman. So it really just comes down to who he decides to bring and who also, of course, Newcastle brings. It's too hard to say. It's going to be a close one nonetheless, though. Final week, Week 15, takes on the Manchester Magnazones. And unfortunately, I definitely believe Newcastle will be able to win this with no problem. The Manchester Magnazones are currently 0-12, not a single win to their name. That could change by that time, but I don't think in the next 2 weeks the Manchester Magnazones will be able to get 2 wins, maybe 1 win, because I believe they take on the South Beach Slow Kings, which also had a really big losing streak for the longest time. Up until about week 9, I think it was, they had the same records for it. And Newcastle, though, the Manchester Magnazones had 2 6-0 losses this season, but the South Beach Slow Kings also just had a 6-0 loss, their second one for the season. They started the week 1 with a 6-0 loss, and then this last week, I believe, also had a 6-0 loss. So, Newcastle Nido Kings, if they win at least the next 2 weeks, they're guaranteed into the playoffs because they have, again, the next highest differential score, and I don't foresee them losing it. I actually even have my other notes right here. Yeah, after week 12, St. Louis Rampardos, current differential score, 33. Newcastle Nido Kings, current differential score, 25. If they can win the next 2 weeks, their differential should be high enough to guarantee into the playoffs if that's how the UCL decides to play that way for it. Again, since I don't work with anyone in the UCL, I don't know how they actually go about if there's a tie for like the top several spots in there. Of course, only the top 4 teams will make it into the playoffs. Alright, so moving on to the next highest ranked team, we actually have the Bronx Bearticks. When I did this report last week, Bronx Bearticks was actually ranked 5th, but due to the 6-0 victory they had this last weekend over the South Beach Slow Kings, have moved them up, at least as far as the differentials go, up to 3rd place for it. They still have... Of course, the next 3 teams are all going to have the same records right now, which are currently 9-3. The only thing that I have them separated by now is the differential scores. And again, I don't know if they're going to be using a differential or if they're going to decide by some other method, because the 3 teams currently biting for the playoffs the most, the Bronx Bearticks, the New York Yankees, Tucson Terrakions. If they happen to have the same record by the end of the season, they can either go by a differential score, which, it could go any way right now because all 3 of these teams already faced each other once, and the next teams that they fight are going to be really tough to call for them. So if they go by a differential, every knockout will matter and that's if they still get the same record by the end of it. If they don't go by that and they go by maybe who beat who during the regular season, then that would mean that the New York Yankees and the Tucson Terrakions would make it in, just due to the fact that New York Yankees defeated both the Tucson Terrakions and the Bronx Bearticks, and the Tucson Terrakions defeated the Bronx Bearticks during their regular match. But if it goes by differential, as of right now, Bronx Bearticks have the higher differential for now. Anything can happen in the next 3 weeks. So, let's cover up what the Bronx Bearticks have to look forward to for the remainder of the season. This weekend, they take on the Durham Drunagons. Current record is 6-6. That was another team that had playoff potentials, but due to, I'm assuming, personal reasons, the Durham Drunagons actually forfeited, by the way it looked, they forfeited the match that took place this last weekend against the Bristol City Blazekins, so they took themselves out of the playoff equations with it. I don't know if that's still going to be the case, if he's going to end up forfeiting again for it. I mean, I don't want to see a team give up when that's so close to the end. I mean, they can still do really well records on it, help make impacts on the playoffs in other ways, even if they're not part of it. With the bulkiness that the Durham Drunagons have, it's hard to say who would end up winning this match. Both teams have a lot of bulk behind them, so it's hard to really call who's going to do it. It all depends on who prepares better and who actually has the best, options for it. Due to the brilliant strategy of the Bronx Bearticks coach, Joey Pokieame, MD. He could very well win. I would not be surprised. A lot of people were rooting for him from the start, saying that he was one of the best battlers. He had one of the longest winning streaks at the time, up until he went up against the New York Yankees and lost for it. So this one's going to be close. We'll have to wait and see what happens going into this weekend for it. Week after that, Week 14, takes on the Manchester Magnazones. As I said earlier, currently 0-12. Don't foresee them really winning anything. So, I mean, as great as the team is that they drafted, they're just not doing it well enough. So for that, I predict Bronx Bearticks being able to pull out the victory that week as well. Week 15 will be another interesting one, the Tulsa Talon Flames. Tulsa at one point was doing really well and was getting up there in the rankings up until the week they actually went up against the Newcastle Nido Kings. They had the same record at that time, being about 5-3, and then after that, they haven't really been able to get back on the same roll that they had. But has good potential for it to win, but with the strategy stylings of the Bronx Bearticks and Joey Pokieame, I don't foresee the Tulsa Talon Flames winning it. So, over the course of the next 3 weeks, I predict him to at least win 2 out of the 3, and could end up with a record of 12-3 or a record of 11-4. The only key factor is that match with the Durham Druddigons. That's going to be the ultimate deciding factor. As a matter of fact, that's where a lot of these teams are, have that 1 week that it's going to be too close to call for it. So we're going to move on now to the fourth-ranked team, the New York Yankees. Current differential score has 17 versus the Bronx Bear Ticks, which is 18. So every kill counts for the remainder of the season. This upcoming weekend takes on the Toronto Tokakiss, the Hacks God, the Heated Mo. Of course, the coach taking on, with Shady and the Shady Penguin, the New York Yankees coach. I predict that New York Yankees will be able to pull out the win this weekend. Despite the fact that Toronto hasn't been going for as many hacks as you would have expected from somebody who is the coach like the Hacks God, has been really changing things up. But I don't foresee, being able to pull out the victory over the New York Yankees this weekend. I predict New York for the win on that one. Week 14, again, one of the toughest teams to call just due to how they play is the Durham Druddigons. This one could go either way. New York Yankees have a more hyper-offensive side, it seems, than anything else, whereas the Durham Druddigons have all the bulk in it, so it's really going to be hard to see which way it's going to pan out. So I'm not calling that match, that one, just like I did with the Bronx Bear Ticks. It could go either way. It's just, when it does come down, it will be a very close match, probably a 1-0, maybe a 2-0 at the end for it. Week 15 takes on the Carolina Keldios, and again, one of those teams that, started off started strong, fell a little bit, started picking up more momentum, but I don't believe they're on the same level that the New York Yankees are on. So for that week, I predict the New York Yankees will win. So that'll be another team. We'll probably end the season at 12-3 or 11-4. All right. And then finally, currently ranked 5th due to the differential score is the Tucson Terrakions, ranked 5th with a differential score of 14. Is going to be another tough one to call. So this weekend takes on the Bristol City Blazekins, coached by Gameboy Luke. This one pretty tough due to the fact both of them going into it very nervous about things. Probably going to be a lot of predictions going on between them. Sorry, I have a cat running around me. I predict that the Bristol City Blazekins will not be able to pull out the victory. Tucson Terrakions will be able to win this one. Heading into Week 14, the Carolina Keldios taking on the Tucson Terrakions. Once again, another win, I feel, for the Tucson Terrakions. So, it's just one of those ones where it's going to be too hard, Sorry if you hear the cat in here. It's going to be too hard to really call a good winner, but I believe... Stop scratching. But I believe the Tucson Terrakions will be able to pull out the win that week as well. Final week, Week 15, the one I'm looking forward to the most out of all of the matches that these teams have yet to take on. There's the cats. St. Louis Rampardos and Tucson Terrakions. Again, too close to call. Yes, say hi to everybody. Okay. No. Alright, sorry about that. No. Oh no. Down cat. Alright. Sorry for cat interruptions. Again, that Week 15, I'm looking forward to it the most. It's going to be one of the most intense battles. It will be really close. Again, it just depends on who they bring. Now, of course, St. Louis has the advantage when it comes to the Megas, with Mega Metagross having the advantage over the Mega Gardevoir that the two teams have. If Tucson wins, then I definitely feel that they will deserve the spot into the playoffs for it. But again, there's too many No, cat. No, Gracie. Too many factors involved with this, with these teams, so it can come down to any one of them. Like I said, as of right now, if I was to make a prediction on it, St. Louis Rampardos almost guaranteed to be in. They just have to win one more week. I mean, then they can get 6-0 the following 2 weeks and still make it into the playoffs with a differential score. Newcastle Nido Kings have been on the biggest winning streak, winning the 10 games in a row. I think they can win the next 3 games easily for it. So bringing them to one of the best, one of the longest winning streaks that will happen in the UCL until probably next season for it when somebody else can have it. For the last 3 teams, since you can only have 2 spots, I mean, it's really tough to call. I could see the New York Yankees making it in because they've been playing really well as of late. They started off strong with a 6-0 victory in Week 1 and then lost the next 3 after that, but then have been winning every single one, including taking on, when they took on as I mentioned earlier, the Bronx Bearticks and the Tucson Terrakions 1 week apart from each other. Both teams at that time were undefeated, and then he managed to defeat both of them one after the other. So I can see that one happening. Bronx Bearticks have really good strategies. The only disadvantage that they've had, and the only reason their differential is not higher than it is right now, is because they've had, again, the coach has been using moves such as Final Gambit, which, of course, you sacrifice the mon, and the other mon will take damage equal to the HP. I think that's how that move works. If he hadn't been using moves like that, he probably would have a little bit of a higher differential. I know he's used it on his Asselgore on 2 to 3 times. I know that he's had it on there. I don't know if he's used it all 3 times. I know he's at least used it twice, possibly 3 times. So it could potentially have a higher score. Tucson Terrakions, one of the hardest to rank teams on it because they do so well. Again, the coach, King Nappy, takes a lot of time actually planning out his moves. He does not just go for okay, I'm just going to do this, and he takes his time. He uses the full 90 seconds to actually pick the proper moves. Sometimes he has misplays, sometimes he overpredicts and messes up. He gets super nervous, so he's really kind of hard to say. But the differential scores of those last 3 teams, the Bronx Bearticks, New York Yankees, and Tucson Terrakions, they're all within 4 points of each other, because Tucson has the lowest right now, score of 14. Bronx Bearticks have the highest with a score of 18. New York Yankees are right behind them with a score of 17 on it. So I could see, this is why I'm not necessarily calling it predictions as analysis. I'm predicting at least 2 of the 4 teams to make it into the playoffs. The other two teams to make it in, it's really too close to call based upon the remaining matches left to go on. Probably if I had to choose, I can see the Bronx Bearticks and the New York Yankees making it in. Tucson Terrakions, again, it's the hardest one to call because of the fact they have to also still take on the St. Louis Rampardos. Both the Bronx Bearticks and the New York Yankees have fallen to St. Louis this season. As well as I believe the Newcastle Nido Kings also lost to them as well, since they've already fought. I think they fought in either week 1 or 2, since those were the only times Newcastle had their loss. New York Yankees, they had a rough week with them. Bronx Bearticks, another one that had a rough week. Tucson Terrakions can do something that only one other team has done, which was, of course, the Long Island Reggie Rockies, and actually defeat the St. Louis Rampardos. Would be an amazing feat. Will he be able to do it? Possibly. He just has to plan accordingly and plan for the Mega Metagross to come at him, and needs to have a good answer for it. Does he? With his Rotom Heat, that's probably his best thing that he can use against it, but he'll have to try and come up with something else for it. So I don't know. In the end, St. Louis Rampardos, Newcastle Nido Kings, Bronx Bearticks, New York Yankees. Those are my predictions as of right now. But if Tucson Terrakions win in the final week against the St. Louis Rampardos, I believe that they will deserve a spot in there. But again, we'll find out how the UCL decides to play these out. So it could end up being, Tucson Terrakions making it in over the Bronx Bearticks if all 3 teams win over the next 3 weeks on them. So we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, this weekend's matches should be good. Only 1 more win for St. Louis to practically guarantee themselves into the playoffs. 2 more wins for Newcastle to get into the playoffs. The final 3 teams, all all either must wins with every knockout counting. So the higher they can win by, the better chances they have of making it into the playoffs. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Hopefully, I'm checking again. Yeah, my mic is turned on this time, so we won't have another issue like I did with my last playoff predictions video. So, thank you all very much for watching. Let me know who you believe the top 4 teams to make it into the playoffs will be between these 5, since none of the other teams in the league right now even have a shot at making it into the playoffs. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up as well. If you really enjoy this and you want to see me become more of an official UCL analysis and rankings and all the other videos I've done about the UCL so far this season, tweet it out to the coaches, let them know, hey, we like this guy doing this, I think you should make him the official one this time, for Season 2, if there even is a Season 2, but thank you all very much for watching, thank you for supporting this series, and for me watching UCL, and I'm going to go ahead and take off with this, so thank you very much for watching, and y'all have yourselves a good time.